you.
Thank you very much. So thanks, Michelle, and thank you, Amos and Richmond, for the invitation. I was invited to speak on two things, but because of time limitations, I'm going to focus on just one. So I'm going to focus on the researching obesogenic food environment study that we have conducted. And I have actually also done a review of Ghana's food environment for the food-based dietary guidelines that are being developed, but there's no time to do the two and do justice to them. So I'll do this one, and maybe if time, another time, I can share a bit on that. Okay, so so the food environment study that we've conducted is on the premise of looking at the upstream factors that affect, behavioral and biological aspects of life. So understanding that things that control how people behave sometimes go far beyond their own individual issues as well as biological aspects. The food environment is known to be the environment within which people acquire, prepare, and consume food, and is known to be significantly influence dietary choices beyond the intrapersonal characteristics like age, sex, gender, and so on and so forth. And there have been concerns that the food environments are becoming obesogenic worldwide. Why should we be interested in the food environment? Because of the relationship between diet and disease. Because we also know of the influx of food giants that drive both healthy and unhealthy food access. We also know that traveling long distances for healthy food can deter people. And so that means that what is close to them is what they are likely to go for. And so the issue about physical location that people would go for what is near them is known, but that also, has also been challenged. And for Ghana particularly, we also are aware of the informal nature of the food system, and that can, make access to healthy food very wide, but also has implications for ability to regulate the food environment and ensure that the unhealthy aspects are tightly controlled. So the food environment is very important as a driver and for policies and interventions to promote health. Based on these, the ROFI study, which was generously funded by IDRC, and sought to understand the changing food environment in South Africa and Ghana, the drivers of these changes by looking at the value chain of different foods, healthy and unhealthy, and then the potential policy opportunities. And I saw some at a point on this call. So thanks to IDRC for helping us. This is where in Ghana, so I'm focusing my presentation, the findings on Ghana. In Ghana, we conducted our study in Kumasi, and so Kumasi is an Ashanti region, as you can see over the green color. And within Kumasi, we chose a rural district and an urban district, as shown as well. And we showed within the population that we studied, 600 people from households. We showed that the obesity and overweight are very high in both rural and urban areas. Almost about 59% in the urban, but also quite high of about 50% in the rural areas. And of course, we know that it's quite lower in males compared to females, whether urban or rural. And we're also able to show that consistently energy, sugar intake, and fat intake increase with obesity prevalence. So and it is clearly shown that it is because of what people are eating. With regards to the food environment, what people were consuming, we found that we use various metrics to decide on cutoffs for what obesogenic foods consumption level will be considered risky. We did the same for also key protective foods to also decide on what is risky. And when that was done, we found that only 15% of the population that were studied in the urban area were considering very low risk foods, but high risk or high protective foods. The vast majority were consuming, they were not consuming, they're not consuming the protective foods, but they were also not, they were consuming the low risk foods. And then you will see a group of people who are in the middle. So some were consuming the high risk foods, but they were not also consuming the protective foods. And some were consuming the protective food, but they were also consuming the high risk foods. But those who were only sticking to reducing their intake of high risk foods, but also consuming the protective foods were very few. And the key obesogenic foods that we found were bread, sugar sweetened beverages, and confectionery, whilst the key protective foods were fish, fruits, cooked vegetables, and fresh vegetables. And in this slide, I'm just comparing the consumption versus the availability. So if you look at the left, the green part of the bar for Ahunjo, and I brought Kalisha for one of the South African town for us for just comparison. But if you look at the green side of the bar, which shows just 30% consumption of the low risk but highly protective foods. And then you compare it with the availability, which is food outlets per square kilometer by obesity risk in the areas that we studied. Then you also can see clearly that the availability of the different categories of foods are associated with the consumption of the different categories of foods. And this shows the geographical representation of the areas that we studied that were mapped. And then you can also see, try to find on the left is the provision, that the food outlets, and on the right is the consumption. Try to look for the green circles, which indicate availability of the protective foods. Then you can see on the left, the provision or the outlets, there are very few. And then when you look on the right, it's not surprising that the consumption is also like that, similar. Then if you look at the aggregation, and you also see that there's a point towards the top right coming down slightly where you find a cluster of the different outlets on the left, and it's also quite reflecting on the consumption. So these are all showing that, you know, what people can see, what they can access, really affect what they consume. So a summary of the food environment with regards to the outlets show that small shops play a central role. Formal retailers and convenience stores are key sources of sugary drinks, confectionery, and sugar. And then stalls, open markets, tabletops, and mobile vendors are the key suppliers of fruit, vegetables, legumes, and fish. We looked at where the healthy and obesogenic foods were coming from, and you can see that the rest of the world definitely contributes strongly to what is available and what is accessible in Ghana. So for instance, SSBs mainly come from Togo, and that's where the wholesalers get it from. But if you look at fish, chicken, then you'll see Europe and America playing very significant roles. And our neighboring Burkina Faso, Niger, are very good sources of healthy legumes such as cowpea for Ghana, and processed meat from Brazil, Argentina, Holland. So the sum total of the value chain found that the influx and the regional influx of imported food is common, and this is aided by trade and industrialization, trade liberalization. There's a complete or near collapse of Ghana's local poultry broiler industry because of large importation giants, because of high local production costs, which hinder local farmers because they can't compete. And then we found that Ghanaians prefer local chicken but consume more imported chicken due to the low cost. And we know that the imported chicken has more fat and is less healthier. So we also found
Reggie, just have 1 minute left.
Yes, sorry, increased level of so this is the last part one slide. increased level of imported ultra-processed foods because of infiltration, value and then these value chains are not actors are not nutrition conscious, and most people have choose SSBs for snacks, and post-harvest losses of fruits and vegetables are very common, as you can see from all these pictures on the right, showing how our fruits and vegetables that are healthy are getting lost. So this is my last but one slide. The last one is just the project team. So there are policy opportunities for operationalizing a multi-sectoral food system. There are issues around coordination, funding, and what the mandates are, which we can share later on. The interests of the food system actors seem also to be varied. Some are interested in nutrition, but others are not. So it makes it very difficult. There are issues also around power in the food system, and who is wielding the power, who should do what. There are issues around that. And then there are even the ideas of what nutrition is around among the food actors, system actors are all very different. So we think there are opportunities for regulation, for promotion, for protection, and also for incentivizing healthy foods. This is all time will allow us. On the left are our team, roughly team members, and on the right are the field workers that helped us. And a very big thank you to Reina, who is now the PI, David Sanders, who we lost last year. God rest his soul. Thank you.